Before she became the woman with her own company. Before the success stories and brand features, there was a breakfast table, a forced smile, and parents who decided her dreams were optional. They thought they were teaching her sacrifice. But what they really taught her was strategy. Because that morning, they didn't just take her college fund. They funded her transformation. This isn't a story about loss. It's a story about rebirth, how a Black woman turned betrayal into blueprint and silence into her loudest success. The morning everything in my life cracked open didn't look dramatic at all. It started with a chipped ceramic plate, a lukewarm breakfast, and my mother's voice trying too hard to sound sweet. Sunlight slid across the kitchen counter of our modest townhouse in Southfield, Georgia, catching on the rim of her glass of orange juice. My father sat across from me, drumming his ring against the table, a rhythm he always used when he was working up the nerve to say something I wasn't going to like. My name's Renee Hall, and I was 19, 1 week away from leaving for St. Rose University, the dream I'd built piece by piece since middle school. I'd already color-coded my dorm layout, packed up thrifted textbooks, and even bought a tiny mint green fridge because every college forum said campus dining gets old fast. I'd worked the night shift at Pike's Market for nearly a year, saving every dollar I could so that move-in week would feel earned. For most of my teenage life, I'd been the reliable one, the one who followed every rule, brought home the grades, skipped the drama. Not because I was scared of punishment, but because I thought being good meant being safe. I thought hard work made you matter. My parents said since I was 12 that they had a college fund waiting, and I believed them. So when my mother said, "Honey, we need to talk about something important before you go," I didn't panic. I just smiled, fork halfway to my mouth. My father leaned forward, eyes calm and distant. "We had to make a tough choice," he said, as if reading from a script. "Your sister needed a hand with her restaurant investment, so we used your college savings. She's in a critical stage right now." The fork slipped from my fingers. For a second, I thought I'd misheard him. But my mother's expression wasn't apologetic. It was oddly proud. "You're helping the family, sweetheart," she said, reaching across the table. "This is what unity looks like." That's when it hit me. They didn't feel guilty. They felt righteous. They weren't telling me this as bad news. They were telling me this as a favor, like I was supposed to clap for being replaced. Let me back up. My older sister, Bianca, is 6 years older than me. Growing up, she was the storm everyone called sunshine. Every failure was a learning curve. Every impulsive decision was visionary. When she dropped out of culinary school after 1 semester to start a food truck brand, my parents acted like she'd discovered the cure for hunger. They poured money into her dream like it was divine prophecy. New equipment, a leased truck, a private loan when she overspent on decor. I, on the other hand, had always been a quiet achiever in the corner, the one they counted on but rarely celebrated. So that morning, when I heard, "We gave your fund to Bianca," my mind went blank. I stared at the salt shaker, because looking them in the eye might have broken something inside me. Finally, I asked, "So what am I supposed to do now?" My father sighed, as if I was being dramatic. "You're smart, Renee. Take a break. Work. Think about what you really want." I already knew what I wanted, I whispered. He didn't answer. My mother squeezed my hand gently, like that fixed anything. "Sometimes sacrifice builds character," she said. It wasn't the money that gutted me. It was the message. That my future could be rerouted without my consent, that being the dependable one meant being disposable. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood, quietly excused myself, and walked upstairs. That was the moment I knew something fundamental had shifted, not in them, but in me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every "we're proud of you" I'd ever heard and realizing how hollow they'd been. The next morning I started packing. Not for college. For departure. I took my laptop, 2 suitcases, and the $900 I'd saved from Pikes. I wrote 1 sentence on a sticky note and left it on the kitchen counter. Never depend on people who see your dreams as spare change. Then I walked out, not dramatically, but with a calm I didn't recognize in myself. That was the beginning of distance, of silence, of me building something they'd never see coming. I left home before sunrise, dragging 2 suitcases down the cracked sidewalk that led away from everything I'd ever known. I didn't look back. The air felt sharp, alive, like it was daring me to actually make good on all the silent promises I'd whispered to myself in that bedroom, that I'd find my way, that I'd never crawl back. I called Kira, a co-worker from Pike's Market who'd once offered me her spare room when her cousin moved out. It wasn't much. 1 small bedroom in a faded duplex on Maple Terrace, but the rent was cheap and the door locked from the inside. That was enough. The room smelled faintly of paint and coffee. The window stuck halfway when you tried to close it, and the futon sagged in the middle, but it was mine. I sat on the edge of it, my bag still zipped, and told myself, you start from here. At first, I just worked, anywhere that would have me. Day shifts at the sandwich shop, evening shifts at the laundromat. It wasn't glamorous, but it kept my head above water. My parents texted a few times that first week. Hope the job search is going well. Remember, we're proud of you. I didn't answer. Every word from them felt like a splinter. But silence can be dangerous. It fills up fast with bitterness. I needed something else to focus on. So, I turned to the only thing I'd ever been good at without permission: learning. During breaks, I'd sit behind the shop counter watching YouTube tutorials about digital marketing, design, and side hustles. I took free online classes on SEO and freelance writing. I couldn't afford the fancy software, so I used trial versions until they expired, then found another email to start over. I didn't know what I was building, but it felt like movement, and movement was oxygen. Meanwhile, Bianca was everywhere. My mother's Facebook was flooded with photos from her restaurant's soft launch. Proud of our firstborn for chasing her culinary dreams. My father commented on every post with heart emojis like he was her unpaid PR team. I wanted to hate her. I really did. But mostly I felt invisible. Then one night, while scrolling through freelance job boards, I found an ad for remote assistants who could help small businesses manage online shops. It paid barely enough to cover utilities, but it required attention to detail and willingness to learn. That was me in 12 words. So I applied under a pseudonym, R. Hullis, because part of me still didn't want my real name tied to anything that might fail. I landed my first client 2 weeks later, a woman who sold handmade jewelry from her garage in New Orleans. She paid me $50 a week to organize her product listings and schedule Instagram posts. It wasn't much, but it felt like progress. That little gig cracked something open. Every time I learned a new skill, ad targeting, copywriting, basic coding, I'd write it down in a notebook I titled Blueprint for Never Going Back. Kira would tease me, saying, "You work like someone's chasing you." I'd just smile, because someone was. My fear, my family's expectations, their silence, all of it. After 3 months, I'd built a rhythm, freelance work by day, self-teaching by night. The exhaustion was constant, but it was mine. For once, I wasn't living by anyone else's timeline. Then, one Friday morning, I opened my messages and froze. It was a text from my mother. "Your sister could use your help with her website. You're so good with computers." I laughed out loud, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. They'd taken everything I had for Bianca's dream, and now they wanted me to fix it. I didn't reply. I didn't even delete it. I left it there, like evidence, a reminder that I was finally writing my own script. Because this time, I wasn't going to react. I was going to build. And I had no idea then, but that silence, that decision to work quietly instead of fight, was the first domino that would turn my story into something far bigger than revenge. 3 months after I walked out of my parents' house, I was still broke, but not broken. My little freelance gigs had multiplied like stubborn weeds. One client turned into 3, then 5. None of them paid much, but I was learning faster than I'd ever learned in school. By winter, I was pulling together enough to cover rent, groceries, and a tiny savings cushion I called my escape account. Still, every time I scrolled through my parents' social media, the sting returned. Bianca's restaurant, the Goldfinch Bistro, was supposedly thriving. My mother posted videos of her plating dishes while my father bragged about the family's first entrepreneur. I'd swipe past the posts like they were nothing, but every caption felt like salt in a wound. Then one evening, Kira tossed her phone onto the couch and said, "Girl, if you're going to keep working like this, you might as well build your own thing." The idea stuck. That night, I couldn't sleep. My freelance work was teaching me how to market, how to sell, how to read people online. But I was still helping others chase their goals while mine waited in a folder called Someday. So the next morning I decided someday was today. I started small. I built a website called Urban Nest Finds, a boutique e-commerce store selling minimalist home items and handmade decor I sourced from small artisans. My first warehouse was a single shelf beside my futon. My first ad budget was $75 scraped together from tips. The first 2 weeks were brutal. No clicks, no sales, no hope. Then I realized I was making the same mistake every client made, selling things without selling a story. So I rebuilt the site from scratch. This time, I wrote every product description like a letter to the version of me who once thought she had nothing. For the woman rebuilding her space, one corner at a time. For those who want beauty that doesn't ask for permission. It worked. Slowly, orders began to trickle in, 1, then 2, then 10. I reinvested every dollar. Canceled my streaming subscriptions. Skipped nights out. Ate cereal for dinner so I could afford better product photography. By the 4th month, Urban Nest was earning more in a week than I used to make in a month at the sandwich shop. I didn't tell anyone, not Kira, not old classmates, definitely not my parents. This wasn't for validation. It was for vindication. Then one afternoon, as I packed orders, my phone buzzed. It was my cousin Layla, who still talked to my mom. She sent a photo. Bianca standing beside a grand reopening banner outside her restaurant. The caption read, "Grateful to my family for believing in me. Couldn't have done it without their sacrifices." My stomach twisted. Their sacrifices. As if she had bled for that dream. I put my phone down and went right back to printing shipping labels. That same week, I got an email from a small digital magazine that had found my store through Instagram. They wanted to feature Urban Nest in a piece about women-owned startups in Atlanta. I almost said no. The last thing I wanted was attention that could circle back to my family. But something in me whispered, "This is your chance to step into your own light." The article dropped a week later under the headline, "Meet the 20-year-old turning quiet hustle into modern home gold." Orders exploded overnight. Within days, my inventory was gone. I didn't even have time to celebrate. That night, for the first time since leaving home, I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. It wasn't revenge yet, but it was the first time I felt equal to the people who dismissed me. A few days later, my mom called. I didn't answer. Then she texted, "Bianca's going through a rough patch. The restaurant's finances are messy. Maybe you can look over her books." The irony almost made me laugh out loud. They had taken my dream to fund hers, and now they wanted me to fix what was breaking. I didn't respond. I didn't even screenshot it this time. Because I finally understood something deeper. Silence wasn't weakness. It was strategy. I wasn't done building, not by a long shot. And soon, they would see exactly who they'd underestimated. By the time my 21st birthday rolled around, Urban Nest had turned from a survival project into a quiet force. I'd outgrown the futon, moved into a bright one-bedroom apartment with real windows, and upgraded from a second-hand laptop to a sleek workstation I bought in cash. Every order, every customer review, every late-night tweak felt like proof that I could rewrite the story my parents had written for me. I still hadn't spoken to them in almost a year. The calls had stopped, the texts slowed to nothing, but news of their lives still found me through Layla. And when it came heavy. Apparently, Bianca's restaurant, the same one that had swallowed my future, was crumbling. A food supplier had backed out, her new chef quit, and she'd fallen behind on the business loan my parents had co-signed. The soft launch glamour had faded into debt and excuses. My mother was helping at the register, which was code for trying to save what's left. I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel joy either. Just an odd, steady calm, the kind that comes when you realize you don't need closure to move on. But the universe has a sense of irony. A week later, I got an email from a company I'd been sourcing some decor items from, a wholesaler called Brightline Supply. They were launching a partnership program and wanted Urban Nest to collaborate on a new home living collection. It would mean a huge exposure bump and a 5-figure licensing deal. I nearly dropped my coffee. That collaboration became my turning point. Overnight, Urban Nest transformed from a small shop to a recognized brand. A few lifestyle bloggers picked up the story, then a local TV segment followed. Suddenly, people wanted interviews. Me, the girl they said should take a gap year and figure things out. I stayed strategic. Every article, every clip, every caption carried one core message. Built from scratch. No funding. No favors. I didn't need to name names. The implication was enough. Then, one morning, my phone lit up with an unfamiliar number. I let it ring out. It rang again. Then again. Finally, I answered. Renee? It was my father. His voice sounded smaller than I remembered. We need to talk. It's about Bianca. I didn't say anything. She's struggling, he continued. The restaurant's closing next month. She could use some advice. Maybe you could look at her finances. Tell us what went wrong. My chest went cold. What went wrong, I repeated slowly, was that you gambled someone else's future to fund hers. He sighed. We were just trying to do what's best for the family. No, I said. You were doing what's best for Bianca, and you thought I'd stay small enough not to notice. The silence on his end stretched until it felt like years. Finally, he murmured, You don't have to be cruel. I'm not, I said, calm and steady. I'm just done. When the call ended, I felt that same eerie calm I'd felt the morning I left home. Not anger, not sadness, just peace, the kind that comes when you realize you've stopped auditioning for love you already paid for. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of wine, looking out at the city lights, and made a decision. If they'd written me off as the daughter who disappeared, I'd let them keep that version. Because while they were mourning the loss of their obedient girl, I was busy becoming something else entirely, a woman who didn't need permission to win. By the following month, I'd launched a new branch of Urban Nest focused on digital branding for other women-owned startups. I called it Nest Work Studio, a nod to what built me. I hired 2 part-time assistants, both women around my age, both trying to start over, and promised them what I never got: transparency, fairness, respect. When people asked about my motivation, I smiled and said, family inspired it. It was the truth, just not the way they thought. And even as word spread that Bianca's restaurant had officially shut its doors, I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. Because revenge, I'd learned, doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it comes as grace. The kind that shines right in the faces of the people who doubted you. Quietly, undeniably. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. Because one invitation, an unexpected family wedding, was about to put us all in the same room again. And this time, I wouldn't be walking in as the daughter they overlooked. I'd be walking in as the woman they created by accident. The invitation came on thick ivory paper with gold lettering that tried too hard. You're cordially invited to the wedding of Layla and Jonathan. I almost tossed it in the trash. But the last line stopped me cold. Reception to be held at the Vinewood Estate, hosted in partnership with community brands including Urban Nest. They'd listed my company as a partner. I hadn't sponsored anything, but my brand had worked with the venue before on decor contracts. My name was on the vendor list. So if I showed up, no one could say I didn't belong. Kira caught me staring at the invitation. You're going, right? She asked. I hesitated. It's been almost 2 years. She grinned. Then it's time they see who you became while they weren't watching. So I went shopping. A sharp black dress, elegant and quiet. No flash, just presence. I braided my hair into a low bun and wore the gold earrings I'd bought with my very first freelance paycheck. They weren't expensive, but they were proof. The day of the wedding, the air shimmered with sunlight. When I walked into the reception hall, heads turned. The music didn't stop, but I felt the shift, the curious glances, the hushed questions. The last time any of them saw me, I was a heartbroken girl dragging 2 suitcases out of her parents' house. Now I looked like someone who made decisions. I spotted my mother first. She was by the punch table, her smile stiff, her eyes flickering with that mix of confusion and recognition. My father stood beside her, pretending to be fascinated by a floral arrangement. And then, a few feet away, Bianca, hair pulled back, makeup heavy enough to hide the strain. Her restaurant had folded months earlier. She was now consulting, according to family whispers, but her eyes told the real story. Exhaustion, pride cracked into regret. I took a glass of champagne and nodded politely as people approached me. Some cousins made small talk. Others came with cautious curiosity. I heard Urban Nest is doing amazing. I saw your brand on TV last month. I smiled, thanked them, and let my confidence do the talking. Eventually, Bianca approached. "Renee," she said softly, almost as if testing the sound of my name. "Bianca. You look different." "I should," I replied. "Growth looks good on me." She swallowed hard, eyes darting toward our parents. "Listen, I know what happened before was messy. I just wanted you to know I'm proud of you." I studied her face. The apology wasn't perfect, but it was real. "Thank you," I said. "I hope you've learned to invest in something that gives back." Before she could answer, the event host took the mic to thank the partners who helped make the day possible. When he said Urban Nest Interiors, a spotlight panned to the table beside me, where a small display showed our signature pieces, handcrafted centerpieces, subtle candles, the kind of beauty that didn't need permission to stand out. My mother's hands froze mid-applause. My father blinked like he'd misheard. People turned toward me. "Wait, that's her company," whispered someone near the bar. I smiled, raised my glass slightly, and mouthed, "Yes." The moment wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was the kind of reckoning that didn't demand explanation, only recognition. My parents approached me later, after most guests had left. My mother's voice trembled. "Renee, we just want our family back." I met her gaze and said gently, "You can have your family, but I already built mine from scratch." She didn't understand, not fully, but she didn't argue either. She just nodded, as if realizing too late that the daughter she'd tried to contain had grown beyond the walls they built for her. That night, after the last song faded and the lights dimmed, I stepped outside into the warm Georgia air. The vineyard glowed under the string lights, and in the distance, I could see my reflection in one of the venue's glass doors, not the girl who'd been left behind, but the woman who'd turned pain into blueprint. I smiled, whispering to myself, "This is what rebuilding looks like." And as I walked toward my car, the soft hum of music followed me. Not a victory march, not revenge music, but something better. Peace. Because real revenge wasn't humiliation. It was success without needing their applause. It was becoming the version of yourself they never imagined you could be. And that's exactly who I'd become. When they told her she had to sacrifice her dream for someone else's, they expected her to fade quietly. Instead, she built an empire from the silence. They called it disobedience. She called it destiny. Because the real story wasn't about the money they took, it was about the woman they created when they did. Now, every piece she builds carries the same message. Never apologize for outgrowing the limits they placed on you. Because sometimes, walking away is how the legacy begins. If you've ever been counted out, this story is your reminder. Build anyway. Follow for more stories of women who turned betrayal into blueprint, silence into strategy, and loss into legacy. Like, share, comment, build anyway. Let them know the quiet ones don't stay quiet forever.